In the pre-dawn mist of September 28, 1943, Lieutenant Robert "Bobby" Mitchell climbed into the cockpit of his P-51 Mustang at a rain-soaked airfield in southern England. At 24, Bobby was a seasoned pilot with the 357th Fighter Group, his name stenciled on the fuselage alongside 28 combat missions. His wife, Sarah, 8 months married, waited in Ohio. Her days spent clutching a photograph of Bobby grinning beside his plane, his eyes alight with the confidence of youth. The mission brief was straightforward: reconnaissance over northern France to photograph German troop movements in the Amiens sector. It was a routine assignment for a pilot of Bobby's skill, or so his squadron was told. But as his Mustang roared into the gray sky, it vanished, swallowed by clouds and mystery. The Army Air Forces declared him missing in action, presumed dead. A condolence letter, terse and formal, arrived at Sarah's doorstep, accompanied by a folded American flag. The official report was sparse: lost over Amiens, likely shot down by enemy fighters. Sarah, her voice trembling with defiance, told her family Bobby was too good a pilot to just disappear on a simple mission. For 60 years her conviction lingered, unproven, until a chance discovery in a Belgian forest tore open a secret that had been buried by time, lies, and a conspiracy spanning decades. In October 2003, 2 hikers trudged through the dense Ardennes forest 40 kilometers southeast of Bastogne, Belgium, when they spotted rusted metal glinting through the trees. The wreckage was a P-51 Mustang, tail number 4413267, its nose driven into a hillside, half claimed by earth and roots. The crash site was 200 miles from Bobby's reported flight path over Amiens, a discrepancy that raised immediate questions. Belgian authorities secured the area and contacted the U.S. Joint POW-MIA Accounting Command, JPAC. The tail number matched a file in their database: Lieutenant Robert Mitchell, missing since September 1943. Inside the cockpit, investigators found a leather wallet, water-stained but intact, 2 photographs, and a sealed envelope marked classified. The wallet contained Bobby's military identification, his serious eyes staring from a wartime portrait, blood type O positive noted in crisp print. One photograph showed Sarah, young and radiant in a floral dress, a smile that hadn't yet known loss. The other depicted a group of military personnel, American Army Air Forces, British, Free French, and a civilian in a tweed jacket, standing before a British airfield. The envelope, preserved by military-grade waterproofing, hinted at a mission far beyond the routine reconnaissance described in Bobby's file. The fuselage told a darker story. Bullet holes, clustered along the port side, came from below and behind, not the high-angle strafing of enemy fighters. Someone had shot Bobby's plane from the ground, and the truth of his final flight was about to unravel. Captain David Mitchell, Bobby's grandson, sat in his office at Dover Air Force Base, Delaware, surrounded by stacks of personnel files. At 35, David was the Army Air Force's liaison to JPAC, accustomed to cold cases that led to dead ends, civilian wrecks misidentified as military, or relics from conflicts long after World War II. His phone rang, cutting through the monotony. "Captain Mitchell, this is Detective Laurent Dubois, Belgian Federal Police," the voice said, calm but urgent. "We found aircraft wreckage in the Ardennes forest. Tail number 4413267, registered to a Lieutenant Robert Mitchell, missing since 1943. David's breath caught in his throat. Mitchell was a common surname, but the timing struck like a blow. His grandfather, Bobby, had vanished in 1943, a wound that had never healed. "Can you secure the site?" David asked, his voice steady despite the tightening in his chest. "Already done," Dubois replied, "but there's more. Personal effects, a wallet, photographs, and classified documents." David's fingers froze on his keyboard. "I'll be on the next flight to Brussels," he said, his mind already racing. He pulled up Bobby's file on his computer, only to find it locked behind classification levels above his clearance. A photograph of his grandfather stared back, young and resolute, marked "Historical Review Pending." Something was deeply wrong, a thread of secrecy that stretched across 60 decades. David dialed Colonel Janet Thornton, head of historical records at JPAC. "Janet, my grandfather's plane was found in Belgium, 200 miles from his reported mission over Amiens. I need access to his file." Thornton's tone was clipped, professional. "David, you know I can't discuss classified records, even with family. Send me the coordinates. I'll see what I can find." As David booked his flight, memories of his grandmother Sarah flooded back. She had died 5 years earlier, but her stories about Bobby lingered. "The military's hiding something," she'd insisted, her eyes fierce even in her final days. "Bobby didn't just get lost. Something else happened." David had dismissed it as grief, a widow's refusal to accept a clean military death. Now, standing on the cusp of answers, he wondered if Sarah had been right all along. The next morning, David arrived at the Ardennes crash site, greeted by Detective Dubois, a methodical officer in his 50s with the patience of decades in police work. The P-51's wreckage was remarkably preserved, its nose buried in the hillside, tail section cloaked in moss and vines. "No fire damage," David observed, circling the site. "That's unusual for a combat crash." The bullet holes were stranger still, low-angle impacts suggesting ground fire, not aerial combat expected of a fighter plane. "We found these in the cockpit," Dubois said, gesturing to evidence bags containing Bobby's wallet, the photographs, and the sealed envelope. "The documents are marked classified. We haven't opened them." David studied the photographs. Sarah's image was familiar, a keepsake from family albums. The group photo puzzled him. Bobby stood among a mix of Army Air Forces pilots, British and Free French officers, and a civilian in a tweed jacket. "This isn't a standard fighter unit," David said, his brow furrowing. "Who are these people?" Dubois spread a topographic map of the Ardennes. "The crash site is remote. No roads, no settlements. If your grandfather was on reconnaissance over Amiens, he had no business being here, deep in German-held territory." David's phone buzzed with a text from Thornton. "File review complete. Can't discuss over phone. Return from Belgium. Meet me immediately." A chill ran through him. Whatever Bobby had been doing, it was significant enough to remain classified 60 years later. At the Belgian Federal Police Station in Marche-en-Famenne, a modern building amid medieval architecture, David examined Bobby's effects on a steel table. The wallet held his military ID, blood type, and a few personal items, a worn ticket stub, a faded note from Sarah. The photographs confirmed Sarah's identity and the mysterious mixed unit. The sealed envelope, pristine despite decades in the elements, was the key. "Belgian procedure allows us to open it as part of the investigation," Dubois said, sensing David's hesitation. He carefully cut it open, revealing 3 items: a typewritten mission briefing marked ultra secret, a hand-drawn map with coordinates, and a list of names with German addresses. David read the briefing, his pulse quickening. Operation Nightingale. Classification, ultra secret. Primary objective, extraction of high-value intelligence assets from German POW facility, Stalag 17C. Secondary objective, destruction of facility to prevent reprisals. Pilot, Lieutenant Robert Mitchell. Voluntary mission, expendable asset. Authority, Combined Chiefs of Staff. Backup, non-authorized. The hand-drawn map marked Extraction Point Alpha aligned precisely with the crash site's coordinates. The list named Allied intelligence officers, cryptographers, radio specialists, reconnaissance experts, reported as POWs, several names crossed out in red ink. Your grandfather wasn't on reconnaissance. He was rescuing prisoners from a camp that officially didn't exist. David's phone buzzed with an anonymous text. Stop digging. Some secrets are buried for good reasons. A friend. He showed it to Dubois, who frowned. Someone's watching you, Captain. David's mind raced. If Bobby was on a classified extraction mission, shot down by ground fire 200 miles off course, the official story was a lie. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. David and Dubois drove to the University of Liège, home to one of Europe's most comprehensive World War II archives. Dr. Marie Vandenberg, the chief archivist, met them in a climate-controlled room lined with filing cabinets. She pulled records on German POW camps in the Ardennes, focusing on Stalag 17C, a small facility holding fewer than 50 prisoners. These weren't ordinary captives, Vandenberg explained, her voice measured. They were intelligence officers, pilots, cryptographers, radio specialists who had uncovered sensitive information about German operations. A resistance report from September 15, 1943, detailed unusual activity at 17C. German officers from Berlin, specialized interrogation equipment, heightened security. 2 weeks later, on September 30th, the camp was evacuated, its prisoners vanished without a trace. Bobby's mission, dated September 28th, had come just 2 days before the evacuation. Vandenberg produced a resistance fighter's diary, its pages brittle but legible. An entry from September 28, 1943, stopped David cold. American plane shot down near 17C. Pilot survived, reached camp. Engaged by German patrol. Resistance buried him with honors. Pilot gave us a list of names and a message. Tell them the nightingales are flying into a trap. The Germans know about extraction protocols. Bobby had survived the crash, infiltrated the camp, and been betrayed. The message pointed to a leak, an Allied traitor feeding the Germans precise details of secret missions. Another anonymous text arrived. Your grandfather died protecting secrets that could still get people killed. Stop now. David's resolve hardened. I need to know who betrayed him, he said, his voice firm. In a dimly lit hotel room in Marcham-Famenne, David met Frank Henley, a 97-year-old former POW from Stalag 17C. Frail but sharp-eyed, Henley carried a worn leather portfolio, its edges frayed from decades of care. You look just like him, Henley said, his voice heavy with memory. Your grandfather died trying to save us and warn Allied command about a traitor. Henley's account was staggering. Bobby had infiltrated Stalag 17C at midnight on September 28th, reaching Henley, the ranking prisoner among a group of high-value captives. His mission was to extract 4 intelligence officers, Lieutenant Commander James Hartwell, a Royal Navy cryptographer, Captain Ernst Mueller, a Free French intelligence liaison, Flight Lieutenant William Page, an RAF reconnaissance specialist, and Henley himself, an Army Signal Corps officer specializing in German radio intercepts. Each had uncovered evidence of a traitor, code-named Blackbird, leaking Allied radio frequencies, mission plans, and extraction protocols to the Germans. Bobby's plan was to use a drainage tunnel beneath the camp kitchen to extract the prisoners over 3 nights, moving them to a culvert outside the perimeter fence. But the Germans were waiting, tipped off about the exact timing and route. Bobby got Hartwell into the tunnel, but guards surrounded both ends. They knew everything, where we'd be, when we'd move. Before his capture, Bobby transmitted a warning to a British intelligence officer, code-named Blackbird, only to realize Blackbird was the traitor. His final handwritten note slipped to Henley before the guards closed in, read, Blackbird compromised. Germans have full knowledge of extraction protocols. Mission betrayed from inside. Investigate all missions authorized through Blackbird Channel. Henley produced a German intelligence report dated September 27, 1943, detailing Allied mission schedules, radio frequencies, and personnel assignments. Bobby found this in the commandant's office during his infiltration, Henley said. It proves the Germans had advanced knowledge because of Blackbird. David's phone rang as he processed Henley's words. Colonel Thornton's name flashed on the screen. "David, where are you?" she demanded. "Following historical records for the crash investigation," he replied, keeping his tone neutral. "I told you to wait for my team. We're landing in Brussels in 3 hours." David pushed back. "Janet, I found documentation about a German POW camp near the crash site. I think Bobby was—" Thornton cut him off. "Stop right now. Whatever you think you found, you're dealing with information that remains sensitive to current operations." David stepped away from Henley and Dubois, lowering his voice. "Current operations? This happened 60 years ago." Thornton's response was terse. "Some secrets don't have expiration dates. Meet me at the embassy when I land. Bring everything you've collected and stop pursuing independent research." After hanging up, David returned to find Henley and Dubois examining the diary. Henley translated another entry. "The pilot spoke English, carried American identification, and knew the camp layout. He gave us a list of names and a message to pass to Allied intelligence. The British officer who received it wasn't who he claimed to be." David's phone buzzed with another anonymous text. "Your grandfather died protecting secrets that could still get people killed. Stop while you can still walk away." He showed it to Dubois, who frowned. "Someone doesn't want you learning who betrayed the truth." At the U.S. Embassy in Brussels, a fortress of glass and steel, Colonel Thornton introduced David to Dr. William Stone and Mr. Richard Hayes from the State Department's Historical Classification Review Board. Their demeanor was polished, their explanations seamless. Operation Nightingale was a deliberate deception to feed false intelligence to the Germans. Bobby, they claimed, had volunteered for a mission designed to fail, convincing the Germans their intelligence sources were reliable. The prisoners at Stalag 17C, the documents Bobby carried, even Blackbird's betrayal, all were part of an elaborate counterintelligence operation. David presented Bobby's handwritten note and the German intelligence report. Stone dismissed them with practiced ease. "Your grandfather maintained cover in his final transmission. The documents were planted to mislead the Germans." Hayes leaned forward, offering a deal. A commendation for Bobby's service, full military honors for his burial, and a substantial settlement for David's family. In exchange, David would surrender all evidence, accept the official story, and cooperate in debriefings to ensure no classified information had been compromised. Refusal, Hayes warned, meant charges of mishandling classified information, court-martial, and disgrace. "Your military career would end," Stone added, his tone cold. "Your family would be disgraced, and your grandfather's memory tainted by association with your criminal activity." Thornton remained silent, her expression tense but unreadable. As David left the embassy, he noticed 2 men in dark suits watching from across the street. Someone was tracking him. Dubois waited in an unmarked car outside. "Henley has new information," he said, starting the engine. "Blackbird wasn't just a wartime traitor. He survived the war and kept selling secrets." At a farmhouse 20 kilometers outside Brussels, arranged through Dubois' contacts in Belgian intelligence, Henley revealed the traitor's identity as Major William Garrett, later promoted to colonel, a Pentagon intelligence liaison. After the war, Garrett had sold secrets to the Soviets, Chinese, and others, amassing millions through Swiss bank accounts. He'd systematically eliminated Stalag 17C survivors who got too close to exposing him. Hartwell died in a car crash in 1953. Mueller fell downstairs in 1961. Page suffered a heart attack in 1968. Vincent Torres perished in a gas explosion in 1984. Walter Briggs drowned in 1997. Each death followed attempts to publish memoirs or contact historians. The last survivor, Ernest Kellerman, died in 2014 after identifying Garrett. His evidence, stored in a safety deposit box in Richmond, Virginia, included bank records, communication intercepts, and proof of Garrett's ongoing influence. "Garrett's still alive," Henley said, his voice steady despite his age. 94, living in a private care facility in Arlington, Virginia, protected by people who profit from his secrets. David examined the documents, Swiss bank statements showing millions in payments from German, Soviet, and Chinese intelligence services, intercepted messages proving Garrett's leaks, and Kellerman's final note naming Garrett as Blackbird. A video call interrupted the meeting. William Garrett's face appeared on David's laptop, his sharp eyes undimmed by age. "Captain Mitchell, you're playing a dangerous game," Garrett said, his voice cold and measured. "Your grandfather didn't understand a bigger picture. Don't repeat his mistake." Henley leaned into view. "Hello, William. I told you 60 years ago you'd pay for what you did." Garrett's expression hardened. "Frank Henley, still making trouble. I'd hoped natural causes would resolve you by now." David ended the call, his heart pounding. "He just threatened us both." David and Henley relocated to a decommissioned NATO communications facility near Liège, its secure bunkers and encrypted systems still functional. They coordinated with journalists from the Washington Post, BBC, and Le Monde, preparing a simultaneous global release. Garrett's network struck back. The journalists were detained on charges of handling stolen classified materials. NATO allies pressured Belgium for David's extradition, citing espionage. Colonel Thornton called again, her voice strained. "David, the situation's escalated. Garrett's running a parallel intelligence operation that spans multiple agencies and countries. You're threatening people at the highest levels." Henley leaned toward the phone. "Colonel, how many others died investigating Blackbird?" Thornton hesitated. "At least 12 Allied officers between 1943 and 1945, all listed as combat losses or accidents, all asking questions about compromised operations." Inspector Sarah Williams of New Zealand Intelligence offered sanctuary in Auckland, outside NATO jurisdiction. On an 18-hour cargo flight, David and Henley worked frantically to coordinate with media outlets in Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Garrett's final message arrived. "Enjoy your victory, Captain. Some secrets have consequences that outlast their revealers." At 0600 GMT, the story broke across 3 continents. American spy sold secrets for 60 years. Garrett's bank records, Bobby's transmission, Henley's testimony, and intercepted communications exposed a conspiracy spanning 7 decades. Garrett was arrested at CIA headquarters in Langley, charged with treason, espionage, and conspiracy. 12 nations launched investigations into complicit officials, uncovering a web of intelligence failures tied to Garrett's influence. Compromised operations during the Korean War, Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam, and beyond. The financial trail showed over $200 million in illicit payments, funneled through Swiss accounts from multiple governments. Henley, at 97, became the key witness in what international media dubbed the longest-running espionage case in modern history. 6 months later, David stood at Arlington National Cemetery as Bobby's remains, recovered from Belgium, were laid to rest with full military honors. Henley, now 98, sat in the front row, his testimony having secured Garrett's life imprisonment at 94. The International Tribunal declassified records revealing Garrett's betrayal of operations in 47 countries, costing thousands of lives and influencing 3 wars and 12 global crises. A compensation fund was established for victims' families, and NATO implemented new safeguards to prevent similar betrayals. Henley died a year later, his mission complete. David accepted a role with the International Intelligence Oversight Commission, tasked with investigating other historical betrayals. As he walked among Arlington's white headstones, Bobby's final transmission echoed in his mind. "If I don't survive, investigate all missions authorized through Blackbird Channel." Bobby's truth had prevailed, his sacrifice honored. David's mission, carrying forward his grandfather's fight for justice, was just beginning. Somewhere, other families waited for answers, and David knew he'd spend his life ensuring their heroes weren't betrayed by the secrets meant to protect them.